Okay, so I'm Liliana Gallegos, and I'm an assistant professor here at Cal State San Bernardino. I work in the Department of Communication Studies, and this is my second year, started in September. So I've been here for a year and maybe about 6 months.
What is the COM 343 class about?
So COM 343 is an experimental course. It's also an opportunity for students to use what they're learning in a live action mode, and it is really based on I have incorporated cultural, theoretical, and critical perspectives toward identity politics and representation, as can be found in Stuart Hall's The Spectacle of the Other and Frantz Fanon's The Wretched of the Earth, and also Black Skin, White Masks, which is another book he wrote, to understand their functions and relations and apply them to a new methodology of journalism, so a new way of doing journalism, which would then further fuel the call to action as it is found in Audre Lorde's The Transformation of Silence into Language and Action, Gloria Anzaldua's concept of la facultad in her book Borderlands, La Frontera, and Paulo Freire's call to action and liberation based on praxis. So practicing what you're learning, not just learning and repeating it, but actually moving your body through that new knowledge. And this is part of a critical pedagogy that he proposes in his book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. So those would be the theoretical, critical basis of this course. So we then apply these theoretical perspectives to address the current needs and demands of our student population post-election 2016. So this course is a direct response to the lack of representation found in mainstream journalism and also yellow journalism, right, which is about making it sensational, not about really telling us the complex reasons or facts behind the story that is thrown at us, so just to catch our attention. So in order to build our community in a time of crisis, to aid our students in their need to practice what they have learned by providing an experimental internship style lab, we give a face and voice to our community as a way to reach out to those who may be unaware of the amount of sacrifice and hard work our student population practices every day just to be sitting in our classrooms. This is something that many of our colleagues and other students are unaware of. And so sometimes students appear as lazy or that they don't care about what they're learning, and this couldn't be further from the truth. Because for some of our students, it's very much a miracle that they make it to class sometimes. And this is something that should be considered, because education is not about catching people. It's not about, punishing people for the circumstances they're living in. It's about understanding these circumstances and then helping the student move through those patches, right? And making it easier for them to be able to apply themselves to the educational curriculum. And thus, we create better citizens. We help the community, we help the world that we live in. So as a final goal, this class proposes a new format of journalism that revamps and reconfigures the guidelines of journalistic style by taking elements from processes found in citizen, advocacy, gonzo, investigative, and interactive journalism to create this new type of journalism born from this transdisciplinary approach that I have configured myself and I've called rainbow journalism, precisely because it is responding to yellow journalism. Like a rainbow is a complex, scientific, beautiful occurrence of nature that we cannot just explain. We can see it and admire it, but there's so much more going on there. And of course, it includes all colors. So it's about diversifying, it's about inclusion, and it's about complexity.
Inspired you started this class? What inspired you?
Your mic isn't working on your hair.
Oh, okay. Thank you, see? Okay. Gracias.
Se mira cómodo.
¿Sí? Ok, como muy.
Let's take the filter off. Can you put
Okay,
the
okay.
That's fine.
Fuzzy, I like the fuzzy. No.
Oh, I know.
I want want the fuzzy. I was just kidding. Anyway.
And let's get your,
Move it, move it. Oh, it's. I'm sorry about that. Okay, there we go. I did add a lot, so I don't know if I can repeat that. Okay, all right then. So my name is Liliana Gallegos, and I'm originally from Tijuana, Baja California. I am an assistant professor here in the Department of Communication Studies at Cal State San Bernardino. And this is my second year teaching here. I've been here for about a year and 6 months.
Okay. And what inspired you to start Communication Study 43 class? And what is it about?
Okay, so COM 343 is an experimental, community-based, activist journalism course that also works as a practicum course, which means that this is like a lab where students can actually engage in different media formats and they can learn from them. So right now we have PR, video, editing. We also have writing, journalistic writing. We have digital media. And finally, we also have the documentary film that we're simultaneously creating as we go along to be able to, record and archive everything that we do here, because it's also research for me, right? So for the students, this course is going to incorporate cultural, theoretical, and critical perspectives and apply them toward identity politics and representation, such as found in Stuart Hall's The Spectacle of the Other and Frantz Fanon's The Wretched of the Earth and Black Skin, White Masks, to understand their functions and relations to new methodology of journalism, which would further fuel the call to action that is found in Audre Lorde's The Transformation of Silence into Language and Action, Gloria Anzaldua's concept of la facultad in her book Borderlands, La Frontera, and Paulo Freire's call to action and liberation based on praxis, which is the practice of what you're learning, right? Through this, then he writes about this through his critical pedagogy and pedagogy of the oppressed. So he's basically saying this is how we should all teach, because through praxis we find what he then says we find is liberation. So only through praxis will we will be able to liberate ourselves mentally, emotionally, physically even. So in this course, I want to apply those theoretical perspectives. That's what I'm actually already doing. I'm applying those theoretical perspectives to address the current needs and demands of our students post-election 2016. So this course responds to the lack of representation found in mainstream journalism and sensationalism and so-called yellow journalism, right? In order for us to build our community, instead, we're going to do it. We're going to show them how we want it to be done, right? And especially now in this time of crisis, I want to aid our students in their need to practice what they've learned by providing this experimental internship-style lab and then give a face and voice to our community through this, right? As a way to reach out to those who may be unaware of the amount of sacrifices and hard work our student population practices every day to be where they are today. In this university, we have a 60% Latino population, of which most are women. And on top of that, 88% of our student population is first generation. That means that none of their ancestors, neither have their parents been university graduates. So they're the first ones in their family to do so, 88%. So yeah, that kind of gives you an idea of the need that we have in this particular university. Is different, right? So I tailored this course for my students for this moment in time in history. And so as a final goal, this class, proposes a new format of journalism that is basically revamping and reconfiguring the guidelines of a journalistic style by taking elements from processes found in different types of journalism, such as citizen journalism, advocacy journalism, gonzo, investigative and interactive journalism, to create this new type of journalism that is born from this transdisciplinary approach that I have configured myself and I call rainbow journalism. And what I mean by transdisciplinary, it means that it's not interdisciplinary. Interdisciplinary is a very different thing. Interdisciplinary means that you take elements from different disciplines to create a new take on something, right? With transdisciplinarity, you go from the problem. You see a problem, and then you find what you need in different kinds of disciplines. So I don't know if that makes sense. So let me try it again. So interdisciplinarity is when you take elements of different disciplines and you mix them together. So you say, for example, English, literature, and art, right? So then you create something that has to do with English and literature, and then you create a curriculum based on the limitations of those disciplines. Transdisciplinary means beyond discipline. So I'm not going to be limited by any kind of discipline. Instead, I'm going to take the little bits that I need, such as a free thinker would only take the thoughts that they need or the ideas that they need or that they think are the best, and apply them to the problem. And the problem here is lack of representation, misrepresentation, negative feelings, fear that students have at this moment. We don't know what's going to happen in our country. So, that's basically what the class is about and why I decided to make it that way.
What inspired you to start this class?
Well, what inspired me was, I come from the border, from Tijuana. So San Bernardino is a city that reminds me of Tijuana. Not so much because they're the same, because Tijuana is very different. They're very different cultures and very different takes on life. But what is similar about them both is the way that they are represented in media. So Tijuana, as you know, is the city of debauchery, is where all the, the most wanted criminals run there. There's rampant, pleasure-seeking activities, and things like this. That's like the fake version of my city. Or the version of the outsider, which would be a tourist, usually an Anglo tourist that comes and looks for those kinds of pleasures because they can't find them here or they're afraid of showing their face and doing those things here. San Bernardino, on the other hand, is a similar situation because they do represent San Bernardino as a bad place, such as, in that LA Times article, The Broken City, right? And also we constantly hear talk about the homelessness and the drug problems, etc. That doesn't mean we don't have those problems, but why always keep highlighting those parts? If you're going to highlight those parts, then do some kind of investigating, investigate why it is that way. Not just that we have homeless people, but why? What I've heard is that there have been some investigations where they found out that many homeless people would be brought here in buses from Los Angeles because they're trying to clean up the city of LA. So they came and dumped a bunch of people here that they didn't want to deal with. That's some stuff that people talk about, right? So it reminds me of my city. So I think about the abandonment that this university may have suffered or is still continuing to suffer, but it's not like a blatant abandonment. It's more like a very passive, aggressive abandonment, It's not like students are denied education, but they are not necessarily seeked out and said, hey, so-and-so, would you like to work with me? So-and-so, would you like to do this or that? Do you want to do research with me? It's not like people are constantly, or faculty are constantly looking for students to do things with them or for them in order for them to get experience. Some people do it, but most people don't. Or there's not much experimentation with education either. So what I saw is that a lot of my students would come up to me and tell me that they felt like they were not learning what they wanted to learn, that they were learning, but they were not getting the chance to apply what they were learning. And even in practicum courses, there have been cases where they tell me that they are very limited in what they can or cannot say, which is not good either, because that's not what journalism should be. Although some types of journalism, mainstream journalism, is that way, I feel that there's another way of doing things, that another world is possible, other worlds are possible, and I like to use plural, right? Because saying another world would take us back to that uniform way of seeing the world, a hierarchical way of seeing the world, where only one way is better than another, And that's not true. So that's really like what's behind that. I wanted to help my students. I want to give you my students an opportunity, to be who they are, to offer what they have to offer, and in the process, maybe we can change education, the way we educate our students, at least in the media realm, right? The realm of communication and media. What else is he?
Someone said, you said what motivates you, right? Roll it.
Ready? Okay. So the plan for the class is basically that we are going to empower our students and our community by we're going to empower our students and the community by inviting certain members of our university to come speak with us and tell us about their story. So the things they've gone through, the things that they do every day, right, to be sitting in our classrooms. So we created something called the Coyote Pack. So the Coyote Pack is a section in our Coyote Chronicle newspaper that I requested for us to have under the community and opinion sections of our newspaper, which will be featuring coyotes, students, and their stories. So each week we will be offering the public, not just the university, but we're also writing press releases to share these stories with the rest of the world. Because right now everyone's looking at the United States. We're the eye of the storm. So everyone's looking at us and they're trying to figure out how we are going to react as citizens. So not only am I trying to send a message to the school, to my students, but also to the world. Look, hi, we're here. Like we don't think that way. We're different, and the way we have been represented lately in media as outsiders, as immigrants, as all these terms that are generalizing, right? They're false because not everybody came in the Mayflower. Not all Anglos came in the Mayflower. They came at different points in history, so they're immigrants too, right? There are more immigrants that are Anglo than Mexican because remember, this part of the world was Mexico, and there were many people that were Mexican living here. The Spaniards arrived 100 years before the English and the Dutch arrived in the eastern part of the United States. So there are a lot of misconceptions, historical misconceptions, and people that are that were recently, arriving to the United States seem to be new immigrants, but many of them are just returning home after being sent down because there used to be raids. There used to be raids and people were just sent down just because they looked Mexican. Maybe they weren't. They were born here. It didn't matter. They had papers. It didn't matter. They would still go and dump them in Mexico, throw them. So people would be pregnant, people would be sick, and they couldn't come back immediately for any reason. When you're thrown somewhere where you don't belong or where you're not from there, it's going to take you a while to recuperate and get money and be able to come back, right? It could be generations. So a lot of people that you see as immigrants today are not new immigrants. They're not even immigrants. They're actually from this land. And the problem is that when the Mexican-American War, happened and the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed, marking the new border, is that there were treaties signed that would allow the Mexicans living in the territory to continue living in that territory, but they were not respected, right? So then that's why there's a lot of lies. There are a lot of lies out there, a lot of misconceptions that need to be, covered. So I want to start by, just cleaning, it's kind of like I want to allow people or invite people to learn about current contemporary histories. And through that, they can start learning more about history and about who they are, and maybe they'll start questioning their own identity, right? So that's pretty much what it is. So we're going to be sending out, stories featuring our coyotes, from in the Coyote Pack, and we hope that some media outlets out there take them and share them with the world, because I think it's necessary for us to clarify some of these things. Yeah.
Do you feel that, professors that teach, history, they're false, and do you believe it's your mission to educate, students on their histories?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I believe that because I know better, and I know that a lot of history professors are unaware of these hidden histories, they are not going to teach them because it's not personal to them. To them, it's pretty much it's nice to just sit back and teach something that's in a book without ever questioning it, because it doesn't toy with their privilege. It keeps their privilege intact. So as a professor, Latina professor, I am constantly seen as an outsider, as a foreigner. I was born here. My ancestors are Kumeyaay, mixed with Spanish, but I was here first. My ancestors were here first. So even at that point, like, people would say that I am a foreigner. And I was born here. So I know what it's like to be sitting on the end of that, right? So because I know that, I want to help my students arm themselves with the other versions, realer, or just other versions of history that are real, that are documented, and that they understand who they are so that they can love themselves. Because in this country, we have been deprived of the love of our own identity. We are meant to feel embarrassed of being who we are, of speaking the language that we speak, of talking the way we talk, or considering that what we think is important is not, right? So we are immediately put down by a system that makes us look like as outsiders. So my main goal is to have my students love themselves, to learn to appreciate who they are, to know how badass their ancestors are, how much we've endured, how hard and strong we are as a community, and to understand that in that pride, or in that, reconnection with history, we can better our futures. Because part of the reason why a lot of people think that they can't do anything is because of that history. There's a lot of talk about, for example, slavery from Africa, and slaves were brought here, and they were put in ships, they were brought here, and they were victims, and they took it. They didn't take it. There was constant reaction coming from Africans, right? Africans then we became African Americans and started, to live here. But they were reacting, and then there were slave ships that never made it to America because they were overtaken by the people that were being brought here as slaves. And they went and they started colonies in the Caribbean and back in Africa. Some got lost, never to be found. They'd rather die than come here because they knew. Obviously, who wouldn't know that was wrong? They took us suddenly somewhere else without our consent. So we are never told the stories of dissidents, right? Or of fighting back. So then we think that, no one's ever done it. It's impossible. This is a giant that we can never fight against, It's kind of like the Tupac Amaru rising, right? That's another story that we rarely hear about, right? But I teach my students about it as well. So then we have these examples of heroes, of people in the community who are constantly questioning that power structure, right? I'm one of those people. I'm not a hero, but I question it constantly in the way I speak, in the way I am. I mean, I proudly speak Spanish. In fact, I have been criticized by my students in my evaluations because I speak Spanish. You know what I say to that? I don't care. I don't care, because people were lynched in this country for speaking Spanish. And there's no way that we're going to go back to that. No way. So they can go back to wherever their ancestors came from, right? If they don't like it. Because in this part of the world, that's the language that has been spoken even before any one of their ancestors stepped foot here. Native American languages, then Spanish. Some people say even the Chinese came here before. So it's pretty ridiculous. So that's why I answer with something as ridiculous, See how ridiculous I sound? So that's basically like what this is about,
Would you say this course is also kind of like a tool? For example, Native Americans,
Yes.
modern times.
Yes.
Would you say that?
Yes. So let me explain something to everyone. For many years, Native Americans, African Americans, Asian Americans have been fighting. Like the struggle has been constant. It hasn't just started. Our ancestors have been struggling with this power structure that has never, ever worried about representing them. The governments we have are not representative of the people. They never have been. They're in positions, and they've always been this way. So the thing is that the way we have fought back has been done in a certain discourse, in a certain format that is unrecognizable by the oppressive power. You do not recognize it because you're blind to it, exactly because it's meant to be that way. It's meant to work under the surface so that we are able to survive in the oppressive environment that we're in. That doesn't mean that we're not doing anything. So that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to work as a translator. I'm trying to translate that to people that cannot understand it. I'm trying to show you that it exists, that it's real, and that we are a very powerful people. But you just don't know that. That's part of the power. It's kind of like how there's the power that sometimes us women have to, we have to modify in order to advance in our careers, things like that. So we have to perform certain things to our benefit, right? Or we have to feed the monster so it leaves us alone. People don't think like that. Oh, they're victims. Oh, pobrecitas. Da, 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 right? But how do you know that there's not some form of resistance going on there that is very intelligent, that is very complex and unique? What if I told you that that happens in many other sectors, not just women, not just Latino, but also LGBTQI, right? With all its diversity, even LGBTQ, there's a lot of diversity there. It's not just gay, because people think that, right? There's all these other different identities that we still need to discover. And we're not saying discover them as we will discover a new nation and then take over and colonize them. But what I'm saying is learn the language so that you can start communicating with each other and finding ways of healing. But if you're not asking questions, if you're not trying to learn from the other, how are you going to help them? How are you going to help yourself if you don't even know how to help? It's kind of like I tell my students, those people that do missionary work, great, you must have your heart in the right place. But let me tell you, if you're not talking to people about their needs, about their beliefs, and you're forcing them, basically not forcing them, but you're kind of like buying them into new beliefs that are not theirs, but yours, that's colonization. It's a form of it. It's like I'm coming in like a savior. I'm going to save you. I'm going to save you from this. But that's not how it works. See, how it should work is that I come in and ask you, so how can I help you? What do you need from me so that you can, we have to work as teams, not as saviors, not in the hierarchy of this logic of coloniality that we still live under. So this is, like I said, our class does that. It questions that authority of who can be a journalist, who can represent, who can speak for themselves, by doing it. We're not going to critique people. We're not going to go to the LA Times and tell them, you guys are doing it wrong. Like, this is how you should do it. We're not going to be like, we're not going to be existing in relation to them. No. We're going to be existing on our own terms, under our own rules, under our own logic, our own premises, and we are going to share that with the world. And we're here, look, this other world or this other way of representation is possible. We're going to show everyone. But we're not existing in relation to them. You know what I mean? Let's cut that. Let's cut that out. We're not going to be a part of the hierarchy. No. Well, in the process itself, it's already different. In the fact that it's experimental, it's free. What I mean by that is that it's liberated. So we don't have anybody overlooking us like this and telling us that you can't do that because, Cheetos is going to be pissed at us, or we can't do that because so-and-so company is going to be very angry that you exposed that they're actually feeding us rat poison. We don't have to abide to those marketing and company capitalistic rules, that we have now in mainstream media. We have that liberty. And I'm proposing that actually the stories that we're going to share, people are going to be interested in them. Because that's the first thing they tell you, like, oh, these stories, nobody's going to care. They're just fluff. This is not newsworthy. It's not newsworthy. What the heck does that mean? Not newsworthy. Think about it. We're talking about colonization and hierarchy. How do people, define what's newsworthy or what isn't? Usually it's back to sensationalism. Back to, who they think are the true Americans. What are they gonna like? And of course, everybody else trying to be the true American is going to consume that because somehow in the imaginary of, that logic of coloniality, you become more like them if you become oppressive like that. If you become part of the upper class, then that means that you have to oppress the lower class because if you don't, then you're not part of the upper class. That kind of like sick logic? It's a sick logic. That's why we have a lot of colorism, and people thinking that they're better because they have lighter skin or that they're white when they're not white. White is a lie. White is a lie. It's a lie because we have people from all over the world claiming whiteness. What does that do? How does that help anything? We're homogenizing our communities. Instead of diversifying them, instead of celebrating our differences and our mixtures, we're trying to deny that past, erase it completely, pretend like it never existed. How can that help us? That's only recreating the same structural logic, right? So that's how our class is different. Not our class, but this entire concept that we're proposing, right? So everybody's gonna say, it's not gonna work, we don't believe in it. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, we're doing it. And nobody's going to stop us.
What would you say to people like that, people who, will criticize our work, who will put it down? What would you say to them?
Haters going to hate. If you don't like it, you can criticize it, but create your own version of what you think would be better than. Instead of sitting there hating, propose something different then. Show me wrong. Prove us wrong then. Do your own thing. But don't come after us like an animal. I'm just saying, do your own thing. If you don't like it. But we're not inviting you, so. Déjame decir un poquito de esto de aquí, ¿ok? Lo de abajo. Sí. Esto de aquí. Esta. Pero los dedos. Okay, so few people are aware of the diverse history of journalism in the United States. Little academic work has really been dedicated to tracing the branch of journalism that belongs to the people. The one that can actually find roots in Native American and Mexican, as well as African American and Asian American cultures in the United States. Erroneously, and I'll tell you this, I had a student in one of my classes raise her hand when I was talking about journalism. And she told me that because I was criticizing journalism and saying how it's a very capitalistic, it's like it's a business, and it only portrays those things that are noteworthy, which means that will generate viewers, in turn generate money, in turn generate sponsorships, right? That then limit them. So she said to me, well, my journalist professor told me that it's always been that way. Journalism has always been selling out. And I was like, really? He taught you that? That's not true, okay? So journalist professors forget to teach about the very beginnings of journalism in the United States. And usually they present today's journalism, the corporate and capitalistic, as a capitalistic tool of power, as something that has always been that way, unquestionably, right? So Mexico influenced the United States early journalism greatly. The first printing press actually arrived in Mexico, in Mexican soil, about 100 years before there were any printing presses in the colonies. Right? So Native American papers were the first actually to demand a better representation of natives and Mexicans in cowboy movies. So they would conduct protests and the like, and they would organize themselves using the newspaper, right? And then they would cover the protests, right? By these first journals, such as the 1828, the Cherokee Phoenix. Okay, that was one of them. So insight into the truly diverse origins of journalism in the United States will have great effects in the way that we teach journalism today. If we don't look at that, then, it never existed. So a great difference can be marked between today's mainstream journalism and the act of sacrifice that journalism really was meant to be to other journalists, not only back then, but now around the world, who in many cases die in honor of their trade, of their responsibility, and their job of always uncovering the truth and looking for the responsible parties, being a voice of the unheard masses. In Mexico, there's a big problem with journalists being killed. Here, executive orders, right, are being signed to basically go after journalists, right? Calling it fake news and things like this. But what kind of journalists are we going to then save or defend, and which others are we going to sanction? That's a very scary situation. Freedom of speech, right? So anyway, this course, is going to offer a transhistorical review that takes into account those first journalists in the United States, and it's going to create a new view of journalism because it's different, right? And we're going to make connections between communication and culture, as well as identify the impact that these current diverse cultural perspectives could have and can have on the communication interaction that journalism is. Ya. Voy a leer lo último nomás. Pásamelo. Okay.
Rolling.
How do you see yourself and your students?
You had to ask that, right? Okay, well, I see my students as an extension of me, because I don't believe in that we are separate entities. I believe that we're all connected, and that we're all connected through not only each other, but nature and the environment. So I can very, very much relate with the worldly experience that my students have had. So for example, being first generation, feeling like I don't belong here, thinking that my ideas are not good enough, or because the people that I explain to my ideas to are just very limited. I have discovered that with age, with time, with experience. Before, I used to think that there was something wrong with me. I thought that I was inadequate. I thought that I couldn't reach my goals because I just wasn't meant to, So I have opened my eyes to a reality that I want my students to see. I want to prevent them from going through heartache, through pain, through the trauma and crisis that those feelings make us go through, right? I feel like enough is enough. I'm tired of seeing it. I'm tired of seeing students, young, talented, beautiful, amazing, intelligent people having to struggle because other people who are less talented, less intelligent, and a lot uglier tell them that they can't do it, or that what they're doing is like, it's like stupid, like why? Or they won't even listen, they only look at you. They won't even look at you. So I see that struggle, in them directly relates to my own struggle. And I can feel, and I told you, and if I tell you this, like, it sounds weird, but I can feel the pain, you guys, that my students have. I can feel it physically. If that sounds crazy, it's the truth, So I am going to do whatever I can until I die. I'm going to do this for as many people as I can, because like my father taught me, it's the right thing to do. You are supposed to help people if you're in the place to do so. If you can do it, you should never deny help to anyone, right? I think that's the key to changing the world. If we live the world individualistically, how is that going to help us? I'll give you an example. If I'm at my house and I have people that live next door that are poor or they're going through struggles and I don't help them, who do you think who do you think they're going to go steal from if they could? The neighbors, so it's like a problem. Like if people steal from you, it's because there are neighbors next door or in the other section of the town that are suffering from not having enough things or food or anything. You know what I'm saying? So if we help people, that would prevent from that happening. But that's not how we see it. It's like there's good people, there's bad people, and we all think we're good. And we only worry about ourselves and our families and our friends, maybe. Sometimes people don't even worry about their friends, right? So I see that uncertainty, that talent, that intelligence, like going down the drain many times because nobody believes in them. Nobody believes in my students. And I wanna provide that for you guys, because it's kind of like, imagine, I don't know, it's kind of like, imagine seeing a beautiful flower that needs water. And it's amazing, and you're amazed by this flower, but this flower is like wilting. So you go and you pour water on it, right? That's like how simple it is, like that's how simple it is for me. It's kind of like there's a beautiful flower, needs water, there. But like I don't know why it seems like I'm like doing mathematical equations here, or when people tell me like, you're doing too much, you should relax. I'm like, what? I don't think we think in the same way, because I don't see it like you, right? For me, it's like, well, if I can do it, I'm going to do it. It's not like I'm measuring what I'm going to do next. It's not like that. It's not like this is a plan for my career. It's not. I don't care about my career. I don't care about my career. I don't. My career has come from caring for others, from caring for people. My career has grown because I've learned to intertwine those things. One does not have to be separate from the other. If you do both, people watch you like they're like, what? What's going on here? They're kind of like thrown off that you're mixing things. So that's the gist of it. Long gist.
Maybe more empathy in the teaching realm.
Yeah. Like not just empathy, but like the knowledge that is lacking from our education system is that the system denies that there are other possible systems of education. The way that we measure knowledge, what we think knowledge is, what we define as knowledge, is left unquestioned. So certain people have that logic. They have that way of seeing the world, and they get A's, B's. They're the ones that are on top. And others don't see the world that way, but their way of doing things is completely left out of the educational system. So they tend to get C's and D's. They tend to be uninterested in class. They don't show up. And then the teachers say, oh, he's just lazy. But instead of thinking, well, maybe there's something about the way I go about educating my students that is turning them off. Maybe the fact that they don't see the world that way and they cannot relate to that system of knowledge. So what if we change that system of knowledge? Of course, it's not good for everyone. It's not going to benefit everybody, because those people that see the world like A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, they're going to start getting D's and F's. And then they will become the underprivileged class. So it's not to their, it's not to their interest for new ways of education to come about. So if they kill me, if I ever disappear, it's probably because this is maybe bigger than we think, what we're doing now. It could be. We don't know. We'll only know until that happens, So I would never kill myself. I would never commit suicide. Never. I would rather die as a warrior than to just kill myself in a bed. Come on. What a waste. What a waste. Okay, so yeah, just so you guys know, okay? Investigate my death. No. So finally, I want to say that, through this class, we all want to show the community and the entire world that there are different and more complex and sophisticated ways of representing our struggles journalistically, ones that respect our dignity and our humanity. At the same time, we want the stories that we produce here to serve as a catalyst of inspiration to other young producers, while educating our faculty, staff, and other students of the realities of our fellow community members, the members that we live with, that we see every day. And maybe we don't see them, and maybe this is going to, help people start looking at each other. So ultimately, we're creating consciousness, empathy, and unity that will hopefully seep through and directly affect the way we relate to each other, our communities, even our own selves within ourselves, right? And also mix that into our academic endeavors, Stop separating those things. And we may ultimately then discover that we can actually make a difference when we propose that other worlds, plural, are possible.
¿Pensamientos finales que quiere agregar?
¿Cómo?
¿Tiene
Un pensamiento final? Isn't that your question, right?
No.
Ooh.
End it with the quote. That's all I was going to tell you.
End it with a
Because I
quote?
remember you did last time you ended it with
Yeah.
a quote. And your dad told you or something?
What did I say? It was a quote?
I think so. It wasn't si se puede. It was something else.
I don't think it was si se puede.